Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a great day. Today we are going to take a look at the brand new expansion for Black Desert Online. Big shout out to Pearl Abyss for offering me a code for the game and then offering to actually make content for them for the game. So this video is brought to you by them, thanks to them. So yeah. First video that I've actually done with any kind of collaboration between me and another company. So just wanted to say a big thank you for a very first time to Pearl Abyss for the code. So for those of you who don't know, Black Desert Online has been around for quite some time. I want to say it officially released in the West in or around 2016. And essentially it is an MMORPG, but the cool thing about Black Desert Online, and to be completely upfront with you, just because they offered me a code does not mean that I will speak complete positives all the time about it, but I do want to go over the things that I actually really do like about Black Desert Online. My goal with any kind of sponsor or promotion is to still be completely honest and true about whatever product that I'm looking at, so there definitely will be a lot of truth and honesty behind what I say with this. But going back to what it is, Black Desert Online is known for having some of the best combat in any MMO, and after having played the game, I can definitely say I think that is probably true. A lot of the MMOs that I've either covered on this channel before or MMOs that I've played in the past, one of my biggest problems with them is the combat feels very mundane and it feels more a means to an end than an actual gameplay mechanic, and it really kind of annoys me when an MMO doesn't take time to make the combat good. So thankfully Black Desert Online has some of the best combat I've ever played in an MMO. To give an example of the way the combat is so different is they actually have it structured a lot like a fighting game kind of, where there's a lot of different combos and different maneuvers that you can actually do. And those maneuvers in different combat scenarios, specifically when you're going up against a boss, they become a lot more intricate and a lot more detailed for what you need to do, but the cool thing is it's all still really flashy because it has such a great combat system. The type of combat system it is almost feels like it wouldn't be out of place in a Final Fantasy game. I'm not going to speak too much more about the combat because Black Desert Online is known for having great combat. That's kind of what everybody knows about Black Desert Online. Specifically, what I'd like to touch on with this on Land of the Morning Light, which is their new expansion. Since this was my first time actually playing Black Desert Online, I decided to go ahead and just jump straight into Land of the Morning Light since I didn't actually have any character or any idea. I just wanted to get a fresh perspective if you were jumping into this game for the first time and had zero idea but wanted to play the new expansion. And thankfully you can actually do that really easy. I was able to make my character, and thankfully they kind of are aware if you're starting with the expansion, and every level up that you do sort of kind of fast tracks you to be able to take on all the different quests and bosses that are in the expansion. And I want to touch on the positives first for this expansion. I think the art style and the setting of the Land of the Morning Light is really interesting. Like, it's got this old school classic Korean mythological setting that is just really interesting. I don't see that in a lot of games. Just from the way like roaming across the land feels, the way that a lot of the enemies or characters or even just like the markets you go to, they're all very interesting and very in the style of this land. And it's really cool because it really feels like you are in a completely different area than other areas I've seen in BDO. Another thing that really surprised me, especially as a new player to BDO, is the fact that the story in the quest lines and everything like that are completely voice acted. I wasn't actually expecting that, especially coming from MMOs like World of Warcraft or just older MMOs in general, but thankfully everything feels a lot more cinematic in this compared to some other MMOs, so I really appreciated that different feel. Another thing I think is really cool about this expansion is the fact that they kind of section it off into 8 different storylines. So what it is essentially you will pick which storyline you'd like to go through, and then you'll go through a series of quests up until you get to a final boss, and then essentially you'll get to kind of play it through like as if you had specific objectives in a normal RPG, like a single player or something like that, which as a single solo player in a lot of MMOs, I actually really really think that's a great idea. The fact that you basically get to pick a storyline, go through that storyline, fight the boss, and then you can go on to the next one. I think that's a really cool concept for an MMO. It also gives the expansion a feeling of purpose that a lot of other either MMOs or expansions, they don't really seem to have. Like once you've gone through the main story, that's generally it. But I like the idea of just a bunch of different vignettes that take you to different places in this land. I also gotta say too, the boss fights and the actual like design of the big enemies in this game are so cool. Like the one I'm showing in this video specifically, it's like a bunch of like ghost samurai soldiers or something like that. I don't really know specifically what they are, but they all kind of remind me of like classic Korean warfare style generals in like ghost form, and it's so cool because you're fighting in the bamboo and everything's super chaotic, but it's really, really fun to fight all of them. And I really think that is when BDO is at its best, is when you have a bunch of enemies and you're laying waste and you feel like you're really part of the world, like you're really changing the dynamics of the world. And I think honestly, that's the best thing an MMO can do, is when it makes you feel a part of that world that you're in. And even just traversing it, I love like riding my horse and just like looking at the sunset, or like looking at all the bamboo fields as I'm like riding across different sections. I think the game is really pretty from an art style perspective, so being able to just kind of take everything in as you're riding across this land is really cool. Now, to get into a couple of critiques I have, I do think a lot of the stories, like in a lot of MMOs, are really forgettable, even though each story kind of has its own like motif and the things it's going for. And I do appreciate the voice acting in this more cinematic style, but honestly, the story still doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I still don't really get anything that's going on, and unfortunately I kind of end up skipping a lot of the dialogue because a lot of the dialogue is just back and forth camera perspectives. I could really go for less of that. I would almost prefer that it was more like an Elder Scrolls Online or like a New World, where basically it's you're talking to the character, they have a quick text box and they say something more interesting, and then essentially once that's over, you just move on to the quest. I don't really like this whole meandering back and forth feeling like it needs to have so much like anime talk. I could really go without that personally. I also think that compared to what I've seen of more Black Desert Online gameplay in other areas, I think there needs to be more enemies in the general area. So like when you're going out of the hub villages and things like that, I really think it would be nice to have more enemies to fight. I felt like I was running through a lot of empty landscapes without very many enemies to fight. And that's kind of weird, especially when the game is supposed to be more grindy and you're supposed to play it because the combat is so good. So I felt kind of weird to have a more story focused perspective and have less enemies to fight along the way. I also experienced a lot of pop-in with this landscape specifically. I don't know if that's maybe just because of the way my settings were set up on BDO, or if maybe it was just because it was a newer expansion, so they were still ironing stuff out. But it really kind of took me out of it sometimes whenever I'd be like riding past another player, and then all of a sudden they'd jump forward a couple steps ahead because the servers or whatever couldn't really keep up keeping them in line. So just a little kind of like a weird nitpick. But considering that they're going for this really immersive, interesting world, I think it would help if they could get that a little bit more polished. One last thing I do want to touch on with the game, and I actually think this is one of its strengths, is the fact that I feel like once you own the game, you don't have to pay anything else to actually play it. And that's one thing that's always bothered me with MMOs that have like subscription services and fees, is when you have to continuously pay them for things. I get really annoyed by that. And I know that technically Korean MMOs or Eastern European MMOs have a lot of those issues. But even though they're monetized crazy and they have so many different options for you to spend money, I never personally felt like I had to. I felt like I was able to play the game and be completely fine just playing through the story and the expansion since I now owned it. Oh, I will also say the UI in this game is very strange to me. I think it was because at one point, or it is a mobile game, but some of the way that it has things set up, and you kind of have to do a lot of tweaking if you want to get a more professionally done UI or make things look the way that you would want them to. Thankfully, there's a lot of resources to actually do that. So if it's something that does bother you like it did me, you can technically find a way to kind of fix that, which I appreciate the fact that it's at least available to be fixed. But overall, I think I had a pretty good time playing this expansion. I thought it was really interesting, and it's one that does make me want to explore more in BDO. It makes me want to actually go try other parts of the game, which I guess that I could say that is the ultimate positive. The fact that it was interesting enough to want to explore more. There's still a lot of systems and things in it that are still kind of confusing to me, like the whole crafting with armor and stuff like that. The fact of just getting different weapons and or armor, I still feel like I don't completely have a full grasp on that. I feel like there's a lot that could be done in just minimizing a tutorial with that experience, because currently I feel like I really don't know what I'm doing outside of just fighting enemies and leveling up quests. But those are my thoughts on Black Desert Online Land of the Morning Light. It was ultimately a really cool experience, and I'm really grateful that Pearl Abyss felt like they could trust me with reviewing their content, or at least providing some insight to it. So I really appreciate their support, and I appreciate all of your support for watching this video, and yeah, for subscribing and liking on the channel. If you're interested in playing Black Desert Online for yourself, I'll make sure to leave a link below in the description. That way you can check it out for yourself. Thankfully, it is on sale right now. I believe it's $4.99 if you go to buy it on Steam. So honestly, if you're interested in it at all, now's a good time to pick it up with it being on sale. Keep in mind, you get to play the expansion for free as well as the full games once you buy it. So I personally would recommend at least giving it a shot for $5. With all that being said, guys, thanks for stopping by the channel. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. If you didn't like it, feel free to leave a dislike, no problem. And yeah, thank you for being here. I hope you guys all have a great day and take care.